You want a what? High Commander Zixtal's crystalline appendages clinked together in what his species considered laughter. Resign your commission? Have you suffered recent head trauma, General Kirvan? I assure you my cognitive functions are operating at peak efficiency. General Kirvan replied, his iridescent scales shifting through shades of determined blue. I've submitted my formal resignation after careful consideration of certain revelations regarding our next potential conquest target. The High Commander's crystalline form dulled to a concerned gray. You mean those primitive bipeds on that unremarkable waterworld? The ones who haven't even achieved unified planetary governance? Precisely those primitives, sir. Kirvan's scales rippled with barely suppressed excitement. I've spent the past solar rotation studying their military history. I believe attempting to conquer them would be inadvisable. Inadvisable? Zixtal's crystals chimed with incredulity. They still fight with chemical propellant weapons. Their most advanced vehicles can barely achieve escape velocity. Their military technology is centuries behind ours. Permission to speak freely, sir. Granted, though I suspect I'm going to regret it. Kirvan activated his personal holoprojector, filling the command chamber with footage from Earth's various conflicts. Sir, these humans don't fight wars the way we do. They don't follow any of the accepted conventions of civilized combat. Watch this footage from what they call World War II. The High Commander observed as scenes played out. Soldiers charging through impossible conditions. Civilians turning everyday objects into weapons. Farmers modifying their equipment into improvised armor. So they're resourceful. Many species are when cornered. No, sir, you don't understand. Kirvan's scales shifted to an urgent purple. These humans weren't cornered. They crossed oceans. Oceans. To fight. Not because they had to, but because they chose to. They developed entirely new branches of mathematics just to figure out how to shoot things more accurately. They invented computers primarily to calculate artillery trajectories and crack enemy codes. That's actually somewhat impressive, Zixtal admitted reluctantly. Oh, it gets better. Kirvan's scales were practically strobing with excitement now. Did you know they once engineered a weapon that could level entire cities just because someone said it was theoretically possible? They went from discovering atomic theory to weaponizing it in less than 50 years. 50 years, sir. Do you know how long it took our civilization to develop similar technology? Several millennia, Zixtal muttered. And that's just their official military history. Let me show you what they do for fun. The holographic display shifted to show various human sporting events. They invented something called hockey, which is essentially ritualized combat on razor-sharp blades attached to their feet. They climb mountains without anti-grav support, because they're there. They strap themselves to boards and hurtle down snow-covered slopes at lethal velocities for entertainment. Surely these are just their warrior caste. That's the best part. Kirvan's scales had reached a nearly fluorescent shade of enthusiasm. They don't have a warrior caste. Any of them can become warriors. Their military forces are entirely voluntary in most nations. They have something called weekend warriors, who maintain civilian jobs but train for combat in their spare time. For fun. The High Commander's crystalline form had taken on a distinctly queasy tinge. And you're resigning because... Because I'm going to Earth, Kirvan announced triumphantly. I've already submitted my application for their mixed martial arts training programs under a human disguise. Did you know they have dozens of different formalized combat systems? And they mix them together just to see what works best. It's brilliant. You're insane, Zixtal declared flatly. Absolutely insane. No, sir, I'm enlightened. Kirvan's scales settled into a serene azure. Think about it. We come from a civilization that achieved interstellar travel before we invented the concept of competitive sports. Our idea of recreation is solving complex mathematical equations. These humans? They turned fighting into an art form. They developed thousands of different ways to engage in combat, then turned them into sports, then made those sports into entertainment watched by billions. The general's voice took on an almost dreamy quality. They have something called professional wrestling that combines combat moves with theatrical performance art. It's basically interpretive dance but with body slams. How can you not want to study a species like that? So instead of leading our forces to conquer them, you want to join them? Zixtal's crystals vibrated with disbelief. Exactly. Think about it, sir. We could spend resources trying to conquer them. likely failing spectacularly in the process because they'd probably weaponize their entertainment systems against us somehow. Or Kirvan's scales shifted to a hopeful green. We could establish diplomatic relations, set up cultural exchange programs, and learn from them instead. Learn what, exactly? Everything. Their capacity for innovation under pressure is unmatched in the known galaxy. Did you know they once used dolphins for military operations? Dolphins! Aquatic mammals. They trained them to detect mines and protect ports. Who even thinks of that? The High Commander slumped in his crystalline throne. You're not going to change your mind about this, are you? No, sir. I've already booked passage on a civilian transport. I'll be establishing my cover identity as a retired accountant from a small island nation called New Zealand. Apparently, their accent is easier for non-natives to imitate convincingly. And what exactly do you plan to do on Earth, besides participate in these combat sports? Kirvan's scales rippled with barely contained joy. They have something called paintball. It's like combat simulation, but with projectiles that mark your opponents with bright colors. And laser tag, which is similar, but with light-based scoring systems. And escape rooms, where you have to solve tactical problems under time pressure. And obstacle course racing, where you voluntarily subject yourself to military-style training challenges. All of these are entertainment? Zixtal asked weakly. They turn everything into a competition or a game. Everything! They even have competitive eating. Do you know what that means? They turn the basic biological function of consuming nutrients into a sport. The High Commander's crystals dulled to a resigned gray. I suppose there's no point in ordering you to reconsider? With all due respect, sir, if you ordered me to stay, I'd have to respectfully submit my first ever act of insubordination. I have to study them. I have to understand how a species can be simultaneously so brilliant and so wonderfully insane. Very well. Zixtal's crystals chimed in resignation. Your resignation is accepted, but I expect regular reports on your findings, for scientific purposes. Of course, sir. Though you should know I've already signed up for something called CrossFit. Apparently it's some sort of voluntary physical torture program that humans pay to participate in. I might be too busy experiencing glorious agony to write very often. As General Kirvan practically bounced out of the command chamber, High Commander Zixtal began drafting a memo to the Galactic Council. Subject: immediate reclassification of Sol System as protected cultural heritage site. Reason: prevention of accidental species-wide self-destruction via human inspiration. In the following years, Kirvan would become something of a legend among both his own people and his adopted human community. His New Zealand accent might have been questionable, but his enthusiasm for every bizarre human activity he encountered was entirely genuine. He became a regular fixture at local paintball tournaments, earned his black belt in 3 different martial arts, and even started a YouTube channel documenting his attempts to understand human sports and games. His most viral video was titled, "Former Accountant Tries American Football for the First Time, a New Zealander's Journey into Organized Chaos." The comment section was filled with humans praising his insightful analysis of how the sport was essentially ritualized territorial warfare, combined with complex mathematical probability calculations and interpretive dance elements. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council's anthropologists had a collective existential crisis, trying to explain how a species could be simultaneously capable of writing poetry about peace and love while also inventing parkour, which they classified as tactical urban acrobatics, for no immediately apparent survival benefit. The final report on humanity, co-authored by Kirvan between his ultramarathon training sessions, contained only one conclusion. Do not attempt to conquer. Do not attempt to understand. Simply observe with wonder and maintain safe distance unless prepared for enthusiastic inclusion in activities of questionable survival value. Humanity never learned how close they came to an invasion, or how they had accidentally prevented it by being themselves. Though some did wonder why that really intense guy from New Zealand seemed to get so emotional at military history museums, or why he kept submitting thoroughly researched proposals for combining different sports into new hybrid competitions. Years later, when humanity finally achieved faster-than-light travel and made first contact with the galactic community, they were surprised to find themselves already classified as a protected species. They were even more surprised to find their arrival celebrated with an interspecies paintball tournament, organized by a suspiciously enthusiastic former accountant, whose scales kept changing color whenever he got excited. But that's another story entirely. Is that interpretive dance? High Commander Zixtal's crystalline form vibrated with confusion as he watched the transmission from Earth's first official contact ceremony. "Parkour, sir," Kirvan replied, his scales shimmering with barely contained amusement. The humans decided to demonstrate their cultural heritage by having their diplomatic delegation perform urban acrobatics between formal speeches. I may have suggested it would make an impression. "You've been orchestrating this from the beginning, haven't you?" The High Commander's crystals chimed accusingly. "I merely provided cultural consultation when Earth's governments discovered my true identity," Kirvan admitted, his scales rippling through shades of diplomatic innocence. "Though I will say, the decision to demonstrate human martial arts alongside quantum physics presentations was entirely their idea. Brilliant, isn't it?" The High Commander watched as a human scientist smoothly transitioned from explaining string theory to demonstrating Brazilian jiu-jitsu. "They're simultaneously terrifying and fascinating. The Galactic Council is in an uproar." "Oh, just wait until they see what humanity prepared for the cultural exchange exhibition." Kirvan's scales shifted to an anticipatory purple. "They've combined elements from every human combat sport into something new. They're calling it Galactic Games Extreme. Do I want to know? Picture this: zero-gravity paintball matches, synchronized spacewalking obstacle courses, and something they're tentatively calling interstellar parkour. They've even adapted their escape room concept to include solving xenotechnology puzzles while in simulated emergency conditions." Zixtal's crystalline form dulled to a concerned gray. "And other species are actually participating in this?" "Participating? There's a waiting list. The Zenthari have become particularly fond of something called space rugby, though we did have to modify the rules after that unfortunate incident with their tentacles and the zero-G goalposts." "Speaking of modifications," the High Commander's crystals took on a suspicious tinge. "I couldn't help but notice that your latest cultural exchange report included extensive analysis of something called professional gaming." Kirvan's scales flushed with enthusiasm. "Isn't it magnificent? They turned recreational combat simulations into a professional competition. Some humans make their entire living by playing strategic warfare games. They call them esports. And the proposal to integrate these esports into military training programs? Already approved by 3 Galactic Council species," Kirvan announced proudly. "It turns out humans were right. Simulated combat scenarios are excellent for developing tactical thinking. Though we did have some initial confusion when the Arachnid Confederation took StarCraft a bit too literally." "That explains the sudden surge in applications for the cultural exchange program," Zixtal mused. "Though I'm still concerned about the report that a human child defeated a quantum strategic computer in something called Among Us." "Ah yes, social deception games." Kirvan's scales sparkled with delight. "Humans invented entire genres of entertainment based on lying convincingly to their friends. For fun. The diplomatic corps is still trying to determine if this makes them better or worse candidates for galactic politics." The High Commander's crystals chimed in resignation. "And the latest proposal on my desk? The one about establishing an interspecies Olympic committee? That was actually humanity's idea, though I may have encouraged it slightly. They want to create a unified framework for competitive activities that can be adapted for all species. They're calling it universal sports. The same humans who invented something called cheese rolling, where they chase a wheel of dairy product down a hazardous incline? Exactly." Kirvan's scales rippled with pride. "Don't you see? That's precisely why they're perfect for this. Who better to design inclusive interspecies competitions than a species that can turn literally anything into a sport?" "I suppose," Zixtal admitted reluctantly, "there has been a marked decrease in interspecies tensions since the introduction of these competitive outlets. Though I'm still not entirely comfortable with how enthusiastically the Hive Mind Collective has embraced something called dance battles." "Just wait until they discover human reality television formats," Kirvan muttered, his scales flickering mischievously. "What was that?" "Nothing, sir. Though, you might want to prepare yourself for next month's cultural exchange proposal. Humanity has some interesting ideas about combining their concept of game shows with diplomatic negotiations." The High Commander's crystalline form briefly flickered in what might have been existential dread. "Sometimes I think the galaxy was safer when we were considering invading them." "Oh, absolutely not," Kirvan replied cheerfully. "They would have somehow turned defending against alien invasion into an extreme sport, probably with commemorative t-shirts and a ranking system." As if to prove his point, The transmission from Earth switched to showing a demonstration of tactical knitting. Apparently, humans had figured out how to turn yarn-based crafts into a competitive event with obstacle courses. I've created a monster, haven't I? Zixtal sighed. No, sir. Kirvan's scales settled into a serene blue. You've helped facilitate the greatest cultural revolution the galaxy has ever seen. Did you know the Hive Mind Collective is hosting an interspecies barbecue competition next month? They don't even eat solid food. The High Commander watched as the Earth transmission now showed a group of diplomats attempting to teach a delegation of energy beings how to play volleyball. I suppose there are worse fates than becoming the galaxy's entertainment directors. Exactly. Though, you might want to avoid the Centaurian sector for a while. They've become rather enthusiastic about something called extreme ironing. I'm not going to ask, Zixtal decided firmly. Wise choice, sir. Very wise choice. Kirvan's scales flickered with suppressed laughter. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm late for my underwater basket weaving class. The humans insist it's excellent training for zero-gravity construction techniques. As Kirvan departed, Zixtal began drafting yet another memo to the Galactic Council. Subject: Proposed Amendment to Human Cultural Heritage Site Classification. Reason: Prevention of accidental galaxy-wide conversion into recreational competition arena. Though privately, he had to admit, the latest human-inspired interspecies curling tournament had been rather entertaining, even if no one quite understood why the humans kept shouting hard at the sweeping implements. And so, humanity continued their accidental conquest of the galaxy, not through force of arms or technological superiority, but through their unique ability to turn absolutely anything into a competition, game, or sport. The fact that this approach was actually creating unprecedented levels of interspecies cooperation and cultural understanding was just a bonus. Or, as Kirvan liked to say in his increasingly popular galactic social media posts, never underestimate a species that invented competitive hot pepper eating while fully aware of the consequences. The galaxy would never be the same, but at least it would never be boring. The inaugural Galactic Games opening ceremony was everything Kirvan had hoped for and several things he hadn't anticipated. His scales shifted through a rainbow of emotions as he watched the proceedings from the newly constructed Zero-G Stadium orbiting Jupiter. Did they just combine synchronized swimming with spacecraft formation flying? High Commander Zixtal's voice carried a note of resigned acceptance through the quantum communicator. The humans call it Solar System Symphony, Kirvan replied proudly. The Aquatic Alliance specifically requested to participate after seeing videos of Earth's synchronized swimming competitions. Though I must admit, using small spacecraft instead of water adds an interesting dimension. And the massive holographic display showing historical human sports moments? Ah, you're watching the Legacy of Competition presentation. Wait until they get to the part about the evolution of extreme sports. The Hive Mind Collective is still trying to comprehend why humans invented something called wingsuit flying before they developed reliable anti-gravity technology. The ceremony continued with a parade of participants representing over 300 species. Each delegation had chosen to incorporate elements of human sporting tradition into their entrance. The Crystalline Confederation had somehow adapted cheerleading routines to work with their natural formations. The energy beings had created elaborate light shows inspired by human stadium entertainment. I see the Arachnid Confederation finally perfected their version of the wave, Zixtal observed, though using all 8 limbs does create quite an impressive effect. Just wait until you see what the Centaurians prepared for their demonstration sport. Kirvan's scales flickered with anticipatory glee. They've combined human parkour with their natural phase-shifting abilities. They're calling it Quantum Traversal Challenge. Speaking of challenges, the High Commander's crystals chimed with concern. The Galactic Council has received some unusual reports about human training methods being adopted across the galaxy. Ah, you mean CrossFit going interstellar? Yes, that was somewhat unexpected, though not as surprising as the ethereal collective embracing something called hot yoga. That's not what concerns me. Zixtal's crystalline form dulled to a worried gray. We're receiving reports of species attempting to recreate historical human sports without proper context. The gaseous beings tried to adapt something called roller derby to their environment. Oh dear. Kirvan's scales rippled with concern. How did that go? Let's just say we now have to specify that contact sports should account for fundamental states of matter. The conversation was interrupted by a sudden burst of cheering from the stadium. On the main display, a team of humans and aliens was demonstrating cooperative obstacle navigation. a new sport that required participants with different biological capabilities to work together to complete increasingly complex challenges. You have to admit, Kirvan observed, his scales settling into a satisfied blue. They've managed to turn their competitive nature into something remarkably inclusive. True, Zixtal conceded. Though I'm still processing the fact that they've somehow convinced the silicon-based collective to participate in something called interpretive engineering challenges. It's quite brilliant, actually. Teams have to solve complex technological problems while incorporating elements of performance art. The humans adapted it from something called competitive robotics, but with more theatrical flair, the High Commander's crystals chimed thoughtfully. And the diplomatic benefits? Beyond all expectations, Kirvan replied proudly. We've seen a 300% increase in successful interspecies cooperation initiatives since implementing human-inspired competitive frameworks. It turns out giving species a structured way to demonstrate their capabilities while having fun is remarkably effective at preventing conflicts. Even if those structures sometimes involve throwing cheese down hills? Especially then, the annual Interstellar Cheese Rolling Championship has become one of our most popular events, though we did have to clarify that participants should use their own species equivalent of dairy products after that unfortunate incident with the methane processors. The ceremony continued with a demonstration of strategic resource allocation, a sport that combined elements of human economics games with practical resource management challenges. Somehow, humanity had managed to turn their entire economic theory into a competitive event that actually helped species learn to trade more effectively. By the way, Kirvan added, his scales flickering with mischief, you might want to prepare yourself for next season. The humans have been working with the Time-Displaced Confederation to develop something called 4D chess. It's exactly what it sounds like. Sometimes I think we should have just tried to invade them, Zixtal sighed. It would have been simpler. Oh, absolutely not, Kirvan replied cheerfully. Have you seen what they're doing with their military training programs now? Last week they turned a standard planetary defense exercise into something called a battle royale, with commentary and rankings. The Tactical Analysis Division is still trying to figure out how they made it both effective training and compelling entertainment. The stadium erupted in another round of cheering as the ceremony reached its climax. A massive multi-species performance that combined elements from every known form of competitive activity into what the humans were calling a celebration of universal achievement. You know what the really fascinating part is? Kirvan mused, his scales shifting to a contemplative purple. They're not just teaching other species their games, they're learning and adapting in return. Last month, I watched a human team compete in traditional hive-mind collective thought resonance challenges. They didn't win, but they somehow managed to turn it into a new meditation technique. And this is good for the galaxy? Better than we could have imagined. We're seeing unprecedented levels of innovation, cooperation, and cultural exchange. Species that couldn't communicate effectively a few years ago are now designing cooperative entertainment together. The High Commander's crystals brightened slightly. I suppose there are worse ways for humanity to influence galactic culture than by teaching everyone to play together. Exactly. Though, you might want to avoid the antimatter sector for a while. They've become rather enthusiastic about something called extreme crafting. Do I want to know? Probably not, but I hear their competitive scrapbooking tournaments are quite explosive. As the ceremony drew to a close, Kirvan couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. His decision to study humanity rather than conquer them had led to something far more impressive than military victory. It had created a galaxy where species competed not for dominance, but for the sheer joy of challenging themselves and each other. And if that challenge sometimes involved strapping rockets to conventional sports equipment, well, that was just humanity's special touch. The universe would never be the same, but it would definitely be more entertaining. General Kirvan, you have been summoned to explain certain developments in the Galactic Games program, the Interstellar Athletics Council representative announced, their crystalline form oscillating with barely contained concern. Kirvan's scales shifted to a professional shade of blue as he addressed the assembled representatives of 37 spacefaring civilizations. I assume this is about the new exhibition sports? Precisely, rumbled the Hive Mind Collective's representative, their thought patterns displaying unusual agitation. We have received reports of something called Quantum Cooking Championships being added to the program. Ah, yes. Kirvan's scales flickered with enthusiasm despite his attempts at maintaining decorum. A fascinating fusion of human competitive cooking shows with advanced particle physics. Teams must prepare dishes while accounting for quantum uncertainties in their ingredients' positions. That's not the primary concern, interjected the energy being delegate, their form pulsing with regulatory fervor. We're more worried about the proposed extreme gardening event. I assure you the terraform while you compete format has been thoroughly safety tested. Kirvan responded. The humans adapted it from something they call speed landscaping. We've simply scaled it up to planetary levels. The council chamber erupted in a cacophony of multi-species debate. The Crystalline Confederation representatives chimed in harmonious protest, while the gaseous beings swirled in agitated patterns. Only the time-displaced Confederation seemed unperturbed. But they had already experienced this meeting in several potential futures, and had apparently accepted the inevitable. High Commander Zixtal, attending via quantum hologram, watched the proceedings with his crystals dulled to a resigned gray. Perhaps you should explain the educational benefits, Kirvan? Of course! Kirvan's scales brightened. These new events aren't just competitions. They're practical applications of advanced scientific principles. The Quantum Cooking Championships have already led to 3 breakthroughs in unified field theory, albeit accidentally and mostly while contestants were trying to perfect their soufflés. And the incident with the antimatter baking division? Prompted a concerned council member. A minor setback, Kirvan assured them. We've since established strict guidelines about the proper containment of explosive ingredients. Though I must say, the resulting light show was spectacular. The council chamber's mood shifted as the silicon-based collective's representative displayed data showing marked improvements in interspecies cooperation and technological innovation since the implementation of human-inspired competitive frameworks. Furthermore, Kirvan continued, his scales rippling with scholarly enthusiasm, we've observed unprecedented advances in diplomatic relations through our new competitive problem-solving division. Last month's Galactic Infrastructure Challenge resulted in the development of 17 new sustainable energy systems, 3 revolutionary transportation networks, and what appears to be an entirely new form of matter, though that last one was technically a cooking accident. Speaking of accidents, the Arachnid Confederation delegate interjected. Perhaps we should address the Experimental Transportation Olympics proposal? Ah, yes. Kirvan's scales flickered with barely suppressed excitement. The humans have suggested combining various transportation methods from across the galaxy into new hybrid sports. The prototype zero-G skateboarding trials have been particularly promising. That's not the concerning part, the delegate chittered. We're more worried about the proposed multi-dimensional rally racing. Oh, that. Kirvan brightened. Yes, the time-displaced Confederation has been particularly helpful in designing the course, though we're still working out how to score events that technically finish before they begin. High Commander Zixtal's hologram flickered with what might have been amusement. Perhaps we should discuss the educational outreach programs? An excellent point, Kirvan agreed. The Junior Galactic Scientists program has been remarkably successful. Young beings from across the galaxy are learning advanced physics principles through what the humans call hands-on experimentation, though we've had to specify that hands are not actually required for participation. The council chamber's atmosphere gradually shifted from concern to cautious interest as Kirvan presented statistics showing improvements in interspecies understanding, technological advancement, and diplomatic relations, all attributed to the introduction of human-style competitive frameworks. And the latest proposal? Prompted the energy being delegate. Ah, you mean the Galactic Cultural Festival and Extreme Sports Exhibition? Kirvan's scales shimmered with pride. A celebration of diverse species abilities combined with human-inspired competitive elements. We've already had tremendous interest in the interpretive quantum mechanics category. That's not what concerns us, the delegate pulsed. We're more worried about something called competitive interior design under varying gravity conditions. Oh, that's perfectly safe, Kirvan assured them. We've established strict guidelines about the proper anchoring of furniture. Though I must admit, the Zero-G Living Room Challenge produced some rather innovative solutions for everyday tasks. As the council descended into animated discussion about the merits of various new competitive categories, High Commander Zixtal's hologram leaned closer to Kirvan. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Immensely, Kirvan admitted, his scales flickering with mischief. Wait until they hear about the Extreme Theoretical Mathematics Division. The humans have somehow turned complex calculations into a spectator sport. Last week's Speed Topology event drew record viewership across 17 dimensions. Sometimes I think the galaxy was safer when we simply feared humanity's potential for warfare, Zixtal mused. Oh, definitely not, Kirvan replied cheerfully. This way is much more entertaining. Did you know the Hive Mind Collective has started a betting pool on which everyday activity humans will turn into a competitive sport next? The current favorite is extreme filing, administrative tasks under pressure. The council session concluded with the reluctant approval of most new events, though with strong recommendations for additional safety measures in the antimatter sports division. As the delegates filed out, many were already discussing participation in the upcoming Galactic Dance-Off and Physics Symposium. Kirvan's final report to the council included a note that would eventually become famous throughout the galaxy. Humanity's greatest gift to the universe isn't their technology, their warfare, or even their science. It's their ability to make absolutely anything into a competition, and in doing so, bring diverse species together in the pursuit of increasingly improbable achievements. The report's appendix, detailing proposed future events, was sealed under quantum lock after causing several council members to experience what humans might call an existential crisis, though rumors persisted about something called competitive philosophy under extreme conditions. The galaxy would never be the same, but it would certainly be more interesting. To be continued, possibly with philosophical parkour.